We have a shocking Minnesota Timberwolves free agency update to discuss. As we know, Tim Connelly is trying to improve this T-Wolves roster that's been to back-to-back conference finals, but is dealing with a tight salary cap situation, and now Bradley Beal, who's getting bought out by the Phoenix Suns, has been linked to the T-Wolves as a free agency option, and frankly, this is very, very confusing in terms of some of the other things that have been discussed in regards to Minnesota's plans in terms of bringing in talent and other just focuses of the roster that have been brought up in recent weeks. So we'll break down what's going on with these updates regarding Bradley Beal, how he'd fit in this T-Wolves team, and whether or not it makes sense for Minnesota to actually go down this path now that he is getting bought out by the Suns, so you don't have to worry about his absolutely lucrative contract. So lots of things to dive into in this video, but before we do, folks, appreciate all the support we got on our first couple of videos out here on Timberwolves Digest. Make sure you guys hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Appreciate the nice comments, but over 99% of our viewers have not hit the subscribe button just yet, and we want to make sure you stay up to date with all of the latest news regarding the Minnesota Timberwolves. So let's dive into that news, because we had a very kind of wild report coming out regarding Bradley Beal, who, of course, if you haven't been following, is getting bought out by the Phoenix Suns in the coming days, if not today. So what does that have to do with the Minnesota Timberwolves? Well, Jake Fisher has linked the Minnesota Timberwolves as a potential destination for this team. I'm not going to read this whole block of text, but essentially, the LA Clippers are confirmed to be interested after trading Norman Powell, as well as the Los Angeles Lakers, the Milwaukee Bucks, as well as Minnesota. And Miami's also a team that was named, but of course, they just picked up Norman Powell. So amongst the two LA teams, as well as the Milwaukee Bucks, the Minnesota Timberwolves have snuck their names out there in the Bradley Beal sweepstakes. And this is very, very interesting to me, because we look at the T-Wolves roster and the moves that they've made over the course of this offseason. And it was a priority, to get the top dogs out here on the roster back and, bring back Julius Randle, bring back Naz Reid, and solidify that front court to the future, which has been very, very effective out there in the Western Conference for recent seasons. But, of course, you lose Naz out there in free agency. So Bradley Beal's the replacement, for Nickeil Alexander-Walker. And you look at his stats, you're like, okay, Bradley Beal's a cool basketball player. If you bring him in at the minimum or a very cheap contract, 17 points per game, 3 rebounds, 4 assists. You provide some shooting, even in a down year, a very down year for the Phoenix Suns last season. 39% out there from the three-point line and 41% on corner threes. He'd improve the shooting. He would help out, space the floor for a team that always can use more floor spacing when you have a slasher like Ant. Of course, can knock down threes himself, but you want to open to the floor with Rudy Gobert, all these guys out there on the roster. So Bradley Beal is a cool fit out there in a vacuum, a cool fit in terms of being able to pick him up, especially at the minimum. I definitely would not be complaining if the T-Wolves ended up going in that direction. However, this would lead to some complications in terms of roster balance and all of that out there for this team. And what are we talking about with this? Because while all the main moves out there in free agency did solidify the front court out there for this T-Wolves squad, even the draft selections, but looking at this squad, in terms of roster balance and things like that, there are some players at the guard position that I think, with getting sent out in that sign and trade with the Atlanta Hawks, which didn't much come back, but more the trade exception and stuff like that. But basically, you look in the backcourt, of course you have Ant. Of course you have Dante DiVincenzo out there. You have Mike Conley still in the mix. But you have a couple guards out there beyond Joe Ingles as well, but that are looking to get some extended run out there on this team. Of course, Rob Dillingham, Bradley Beal wouldn't affect that. He's not going to be playing point guard too much. But you have Terrence Shannon Jr., who is a player that I am very, very intrigued by his development and what impact he can have on the Timberwolves going into next year. So I'm not the only one that's discussing this, because Chris Finch just came out and directly stated that what we love about TJ is that he has a very well-defined game. He knows who he is, and we saw that. You can throw him in at any moment next year, obviously, he's going to be a significant part of our rotation. So that is a lot of high praise. That is a lot of high praise out there from a Chris Finch who, saw some flashes. We all saw it, last season in terms of Terrence Shannon Jr. Looking at TJ's athleticism and the impact that he can actually have out there on this team, he's one of the guys in terms of, yes, he's an older rookie. Yes, he's 25 years old, and people bring that up in terms of his development. But you look at how he actually played in that limited run last year, scant minutes that were going around, because obviously this T-Wolves team is pretty loaded at that position, even with now, at this point, with with Na getting sent out. But basically, if we look at what's really going on with his development, if he comes in and has some opportunity to get out there on the court, there's a lot of people talking about how, hey, he has TJ has the potential to break into that sixth man of the year contention, has that sort of upside out there on this squad with the scoring ability, athleticism, all of that. Frankly, he's someone that I wouldn't want to just hamper his development for another season. Forget on another season and bring in Bradley Beal to steal all those minutes, because you have Dante, you have Bradley Beal, you have all those at that specific position. So, of course, injuries happen. Of course, changes the rotation, all that can go down. But I don't know. I'd like to see what TJ has in his arsenal in terms of a full season of actually being a consistent rotation player. And then also, having Dillingham out there in the mix will be crucial in terms of taking this team to the next level. You don't always have to look externally in order to improve your roster. And then if you do that, if you move in that direction, you can also bolster your front court a little bit, because I know a lot of people aren't a big fan of, he didn't get a lot of opportunity, but Garza out there, and we're saying, oh, it's not a big deal, he left, or whatever it is. You can, with Garza gone, you can make some free agent acquisitions in order to beef up your front court then at that point, because there are a couple interesting options still out there on the market if we are looking into this year's free agency as it currently stands. Of course, in the front court, you have Marvin Bagley the second, Malcolm Brogdon, another guy that's been linked to the T-Wolves as well, which we will discuss. Chris Boucher is a very interesting player, because not only could he be, an impact defensively, but also spaces the floor and could be a really, really nice fit around Naz Reid out there in that second unit. And looking at his stats, he's a guy, 10 points per game, 5 rebounds, 37% from the three-point line, could be very effective out there for this group. Another cheaper option could be, Trey Lyles, who did shoot 34% from the three-point line. The Kings, they were an interesting team last year, but still only 29 years old. Trey Lyles can space the floor and have an impact out there at that forward position. Not saying that, of course, the T-Wolves front court is still very, very loaded with Gobert, with Julius Randle, with McDaniels, with Naz Reid, and all those types of guys. But just having some more front court depth to help with injuries, to mitigate all of that stuff, could be very, very valuable. Of course, you have the Rooks coming in out there in Beringue. I got to pronounce his name correctly, but Beringer, my français, c'est très mal. But, we take a look at all of this. Frankly, I just like to see Terrence Shannon Jr. have that opportunity at that guard position and let him run, rather than a Bradley Beal coming out there into the mix. And the last question in regards to Bradley Beal's game is defensively. And we know how focused the Minnesota Timberwolves are on the defensive end. It's one of the reasons they've been so successful in recent seasons. So if you lose Nah and bring in a Bradley Beal, yes, you are maintaining some of the shooting, you're maintaining some of the three-point stroke, you are losing that defensive upside where TJ could develop into a position to where he's able to provide, of course, not the same, impact right away as Nah, but hopefully get there with his athleticism, size, and working inside of Chris Finch's system. So that's what I'm looking at in terms of these Bradley Beal updates. Do you guys think that this is the right fit for the Minnesota Timberwolves? Let me know in the comment section down below. Are there some other free agent options you'd like to see this team bring in? Let me know. I'll break it all down in future videos. Anyways, make sure you subscribe. As I mentioned before, right, 99% haven't hit the subscribe button just yet. So if you're enjoying the Timberwolves content, make sure you guys hit that sub button. Anyways, I'm signing out. Cheers.